Welcome to The Howl, where GPAC's team of passionate people share 30 years of experience in the recruiting biz, with front row seats to hundreds of different industries. I'm your host, Luke Linus, and I'll be sitting down in the GPAC studio with recruiters, coaches, and industry leaders to talk shop on modern work culture, job hunting tips, elevating your recruiting game, and insight into trends and hiring for companies of all sizes. Hey everybody, and welcome back to The Howl. Thank you for joining the conversation today. If you're listening on a podcast, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Check out the amazing episodes we've had leading up to this one. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you give it a like and subscribe to the channel. A lot of great content coming in this first season that really happens at the intersection between recruiting and company ownership or company life and being an employee in the corporate world today. A lot of great topics ranging from interview techniques to how to really focus in on hiring good people, on how to work with recruiters, all the way to work culture and how to manage a remote workforce in a pandemic. So a lot of great relevant topics. We try to keep this in the wheelhouse of what we know as recruiters, but also kind of taking in other experiences that people have. And one of those is training, is company training. And so I wanted to have a conversation about training, why it's important to a company, what benefits it can bring to your company to really build out a robust training program, and just what life is like as a trainer and the way training is evolving now that we're moving into more of a remote workforce type setting. So I'm excited today to have Erin Johnson in the studio to have this conversation. She's one of the key trainers here at GPAC, so excited to have you in for this conversation today. Thanks, Erin.
Yeah, thank you. Really happy to be here.
Yeah, this is kind of fun, right? Not a bad way to spend a Friday morning.
Yeah, not at all.
Kind of introduce yourself a little bit. Talk about a little about your background, how you got started training at GPAC.
Yeah. My background, I guess specifically here at GPAC, I had graduated college. I was probably like a lot of other people. I didn't really necessarily know what I wanted to do. It was one of those things that, a lot of my friends were nurses, they had a clear career path. And so as I was, graduating, I got into some different roles. I kind of started out managing people, at a retail store. Then I kind of transitioned into a, financial office here in Sioux Falls. And I guess the reason that I kind of bring that up is because that has really kind of formed, my transition into GPAC, why I accepted this position. And it's essentially formed how I train. Yeah. How I talk to the candidates and companies that we're working with day to day. So I think having that background and skill set, what really brought me to GPAC is a lot of different things. I think very similar to people that you've probably heard from and talked to is that income potential. It's that flexibility. It's that work-life balance. It's, putting in that time and effort and being rewarded for, those efforts and being able to kind of see the fruits of your labor. So that's initially how I got started at GPAC. I started on a desk. I was on a desk for about 6 months. And, I jokingly say to every training group, back in those days, we didn't really have a training program. There was somewhat of, we definitely had the support, but I spent about a day and a half in the back room of the mothership with Jason Lawrenson, and we were off and running. So I think there's a lot of value to that. But again, I take that experience and I kind of, think of how that impacted my time here and then also how that translates into the training that we do today. So it's vastly different from when I started. But really how I kind of got into this role, I'd been here for about 6 months. I was doing fairly well on a desk. And I had a lot of support, a lot of, coaching, mentorship that I had really taken in. And, GPAC had approached me and they're like, hey, we're doing something really cool. We're going to bring in our training kind of in-house. So at the time we were with MRI and we had done some of our training. So again, I kind of jokingly say that the initial training that I had, I got it probably 4 or 5 weeks after I started because that was just, when it was scheduled out. And I had probably already created all my bad habits by then. So, I think I took this opportunity, and I kind of looked at it, and I thought to myself, this is an opportunity to have the best of both worlds. I get the opportunity to talk to clients. I get the opportunity to talk to candidates, but really I would say what hooked me with GPAC was the ability to help people.
Yep.
And I think that, taking out all of that income potential and that flexibility and kind of looking at that internally and maybe even a little bit selfishly as you get started, I think as you start to have these conversations with candidates and with companies, you see the impact you're making. And that's what keeps you here,
yep.
right? So having the ability to help people grow within GPAC, but also saying, hey, I can still help candidates and I can still help companies.
Yep, more indirectly.
Yep.
I love it. And I want to get into some of that, even personal motivation stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe for context, like, training or our training program at GPAC maybe is a unique thing in the sense that we're taking people who maybe don't have a background in recruiting and we're teaching them how to recruit in 3 to 4 weeks currently, right?
4 weeks.
4 weeks.
Yeah.
So, when people think maybe training, a lot of people could be listening to this podcast, maybe, people in companies, maybe it's employees, maybe it's recruiters, but, training means a lot of things. Maybe when some people hear training, they kind of hear like the 5 videos you have to watch when you start a new job. Or if you're more in the trades, it's more like that apprenticing, shadowing stage of like learning the ins and the outs of how a specific company does what they do well, right? Or safety training. There's training is maybe this kind of like simple word to define a wide variety of processes.
A lot of different things.
But for context, the way we train is literally taking people from 0 to hero in 4 weeks, right?
Yep.
So kind of describe the process, just not necessarily touting what we do, but I just want people to understand when we say training at GPAC, what does our training program look like?
Yeah. I think our training here at GPAC is, personally, I would say it's second to none. I've been in a lot of different areas where I've gotten different types of training. I've experienced a lot of different types of training. So what we do, we always say, you don't have to be an expert in the recruiting industry. Oftentimes people are not. Like you said, we're kind of taking people with no background in recruiting at all, and we're teaching them the basics of the business. We're kind of packing 31 years worth of, industry knowledge into those 4 weeks. So a couple of things that, you'll oftentimes hear when you're getting into this training is it's going to be a little bit like drinking from a fire hose. It's a lot of information. And I think, again, the unique thing about our training program is that we'll be the first people to say, your training doesn't stop after the first 4 weeks.
Yep.
It's going to be a continual process. So, initially when you get started, you'll have, a couple days where you're with Shay and I, or the training team, and you get a lot of information, but then you're into it on the 3rd day, right? And I think that can be overwhelming, but it can also be very exciting. I know a lot of places, they have this really long training, like probationary period. You're not in the game right away. So I think, outside of, just the kind of classroom setting, what we've found is the best way to really learn this craft is by doing it. It's kind of the old, if you don't get on the bike, you don't know how to ride it, right? You might fall off, scrape your knee a couple times, but the best way to learn is by just getting in and doing it. So I think our training program has implemented this really, really solid set of, kind of that classroom setting, but also being able to really put into action what you're learning day in and day out.
Yeah, so that's really cool. And I want to know, too, kind of what is your specific role in that training process? Because it is kind of like in a way, it's an on-the-job training, right? Down the road, we made a decision, we're going to do everything in-house. So, what is your specific role in that?
So I think... what I will say about the training in and of itself, it's kind of my baby. It's something that I with the support of GPAC, kind of helped develop.
Yep.
And it's grown, it's gotten better. We have a better team, a stronger team that's able to kind of, support more people. And again, it's just continually growing and learning.
Yeah.
But what I specifically do, so when you start at GPAC, you have a 4-week training. So that 4-week training is going to be some classroom setting where you're going to be kind of learning the business. But then we have, small group, more individualized training. We'll have training specifically on the tools that we use. So I'm, myself and Bria and Shay and now Ashley, we're kind of the point people for those first 4 weeks.
Yep.
Your initial introduction into the basics of the business.
Yep. Yeah. And so, early on, I think, like I said, GPAC had this decision to, maybe there's a couple different ways we could have done this, but we chose a in-house. So using people internally who've been on a desk, they understand the business.
Yep.
That was one choice, right?
Yep.
They're not outsourcing it.
Right.
They're not creating, at least at the beginning, they're not creating an automated training. It's more of a get a bunch of people in the room and basically lead them those first early days to becoming a recruiter.
Yeah. And I think that is, both of those things coupled together are very, very powerful. I think as you get into this recruiting game, it can be very challenging to keep that, very strong, mental mindset of executing every single day. Right. I think the great thing about the training team and leadership in general is that everyone's been on a desk.
Yep.
None of us really came in with any recruiting experience.
Yep.
So we know and understand, where these people are at.
Yep.
We've all experienced, struggles on our desk. We've all of us have experienced successes on our desk.
Yep.
Right. So I think being able to have a team that can meet people where they're at. And say, hey, I know, I understand what you went through.
Yep.
I did that myself.
Yep.
And I think, it's not outsourced. It's very personal. We genuinely care about the success of every single person in training.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like the impact that a teacher has on a child in the sense of you're taking them through a developmental stage and you're kind of the person that is the support system for them to move on. So I think that's the power of personal training or in-person training. Yeah. So maybe you don't know the answer to this question, but I'm curious, in my opinion or my understanding, limited understanding, is kind of like training is an investment, right? Mm-hmm. If for a company to have in-house training, that's staff, that's resources, that's initial investment in the people that you're bringing on, right? Mm-hmm. And we are bringing on a lot of people. We're onboarding a lot of people. Yeah. That's a high initial investment. Yeah. Do companies undervalue or overvalue or accurately value training? Yeah. I mean, maybe you don't know the answer to that, but just generally.
Well, my hope would be that they, overvalue training. I think, every single day when I wake up and I know I'm going to be training, I feel a deep sense of responsibility to every single person that goes through class. Not only responsibility, but I genuinely care about them. I think, for me, we wouldn't have hired them if we didn't believe in them. So I think having the ability to say, all right, these are your foundations. It's my responsibility to make sure you have a solid foundation, and that's going to cause you to be successful. My hope is that every company takes that just as seriously. And I know GPAC, again, I think that's one really great thing about, what we do is we really emphasize that training, not even just in your first 4 weeks, but continual training, continual growth, continual learning, that mindset of, never being content with where you're at. Yep. So, I will say, in past experiences, I've had two different realms of training. I've had the, hey, really hands-on, get in there and kind of that mentorship. Yep. And then I've had, hey, we have, 50 videos for you to watch. I'm just going to put you in this office and, let me know when you're done. Yep. I think there's obviously places for both, but for me, that mentorship, that hands-on, that's where people typically learn the best. That's where they feel the most valued. Yeah. So, I think I won't sit here and say I'm the expert, the know-all on everything training, but I have experienced a lot of different types of training, and I know that everyone probably responds to different things, different personalities, different ways that you learn, what you've experienced in your life. But I think being able to kind of get in there and show someone that you care and show someone that you support them, especially in this endeavor, is actually probably one of the most beneficial pieces of training.
Yeah. And what are the maybe some of them are intangible, maybe some of them are tangible. What are the benefits of having a robust training program or team in your company?
Yeah.
Because the obvious one is taking someone starting out and getting them in the position they need to be in, right?
Yeah.
That's the obvious one.
Yeah.
But what else beyond that is a benefit?
Well, I think if you have a really, robust training program where you are interactive, where you are kind of taking that opportunity to have that mentorship, it also allows that new person to feel included. It makes them feel like they're part of the company versus just saying, "Hey, we're gonna set you in this office over here. Let me know when you're done."
Yeah.
I think there's so much interaction, and it can't be understated, especially because a lot of our individuals are remote, so it can be really easy to put yourself on an island. So, initially when we started training, I kind of jokingly say it has transitioned so much because I started with 3 or 4 people in the back room of the mothership, and now we have 60 people a month all over the United States.
Yeah.
So we've definitely transitioned and grown in that. But the cool thing is, the training is the same, but there's even more support, I think. So we were able to really scale that well, and hopefully, every single person feels like we're available to them, or they have someone that they can reach out to, even past the knowledge. Because like I said, you're not going to know it in 4 weeks. This is a craft. I think that's another point I would make on training. Whether it be at GPAC, whether it would be with another company, no one should ever expect to go into anything and be an expert at it at 4 weeks. It's going to take time. So, putting that time into your craft, having that support and being able to kind of start with those basics, start with that foundation, and then build from there.
Yep. So you kind of said, apart the benefits, you kind of mentioned obviously the one we talked about, just getting skills transitioned, right? You talked about value, kind of like helping people feel like they're not just a number in a game. They're like actually a person that's a part of a vibrant company. You talked early on in the podcast about kind of laying the foundation, like how crucial that is to set somebody up for success in a business. Maybe it's culture. And I think you kind of indirectly mentioned that, where it's like, kind of helping shape them to be a part of the culture or bring themselves to the table. And maybe the one that we haven't mentioned is like, or at least the one I wrote down as I was thinking about this, is maybe it's like protecting your investment. Like if you invest money in hiring somebody, if you train them well, and your point, not just at the beginning, but throughout, you're protecting that investment.
Well, a couple things come to mind to that point. There are some stats out there that says, it costs a company as much as, 213% of a person's salary to replace them when they leave. Right.
Yeah.
That's, cost of training. That's cost of not having them in place. It's, cost of finding the right person. It's, all of those things that go into a hire. So if you lose someone that's very, very capable, whether it be from lack of training, whether it be from lack of support, that's a huge expense to a company. And I think a lot of times, when I think about our responsibility with training and protecting that investment is, people don't leave companies, that have trained them and supported them well. Right. If you train people well enough where they can leave, but you treat them well enough so they will stay. I think that coupled together, don't be scared to train them. Don't be scared to empower them. It's going to, benefit you in the long run. Yeah,
that's so good.
Yeah.
Oh, it's such a, like, really, truly, it's a huge asset.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about leadership in a company, your training team, they should be some good people, right? Because they have the greatest impact really on somebody coming into that company.
Yeah, I think we're that first exposure to anyone, right? Yeah, they're going to talk with their coaches. Yeah, they're going to talk with their teammates, but we're really their first impression.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to talk about that in a little bit. Like, what does it take? What's the right person? But before we do, like, what are some challenges? So you mentioned remote, and I want to talk about remote early in this podcast because I think that's really relevant right now. But even whether we're thinking in person, because some companies aren't going to be remote necessarily. What are some just those big challenges to the training environment?
I think as, specifically for us, we've done, exclusively in-house.
Yep.
We've done, a mixture of the two, and then we've done completely remote. So we've been exposed to a lot of those things. And I think each, scenario has its challenges.
Yeah.
I think the obvious one with a remote setting is making sure you're engaged.
Yeah.
But, I think every single day, I have to essentially, bring my best to the table because I know that at the end of the day, sometimes it's hard to sit through an hour of training. I know that. So if people can suffer through my corny jokes, I'll do whatever it takes to keep them engaged. But I think, every company is going to have different challenges with training. But really what I would say is it comes down to the right hire.
Yep.
So if we have the good people, the momentum is there. They all support each other. So, before they even get to me or to the training team, I think having someone with the right mindset, having someone that knows they're going to be engaged, someone that's really bought in, I think that's really critical to having that success. So knowing that you're hiring the right people.
Yep.
Challenges, I think the GPAC approach is not take it as it comes, but we're adaptable.
Yep.
And maybe that might have been a challenge for me at first.
Yeah.
I'm very structured.
Yeah.
I like to make sure that everything is in its place. So, having things like kind of thrown for a loop when we went completely remote.
Yep.
I think luckily for us, we have a lot of support.
Yep.
Not even just with recruiters, but even, from the goods and from Shay, where we can say, all right, here's what's working, here's what's not.
Let's tweak it.
Let's make it work.
Yep.
This is what we're doing. We're going to make everyone successful, and we're going to do what it takes.
Yep. And how important is that? Maybe this is a tangent, but there's two typical things that a company struggles with. It's legacy and innovation.
Yeah.
Right. So, and both are important because you want to have a good foundation.
Yep.
And you also want to be adaptable. So like what's your take on that in the sense of what does a training program need or trainers need to balance those two?
Yeah.
Like to not just completely shift over and forget what maybe the company was built on, but also be able to still innovate.
Well, I think, again, not to spend the whole time tooting GPAC's horn here, but, really, I think we have a combination here within our training program to say, here's the basics. Here's what, Dave Good learned in 1990 when, they opened the doors. And again, that's very, very different, right?
Yep.
I jokingly say we didn't have this instantaneous, I can send you an agreement right now, right?
Sure.
It was like, hey, I might have to fax it over. I might have to have this, so I think having some of those basics that transition into where we're at right now, where we're starting to grow, where we're starting to innovate, where we're starting to use more tools, where we're starting to really think about how can we be the most effective and not kind of bury our head in the sand and say, hey, it's only 100 cold calls every single day.
Yeah.
But saying, hey, here's what you can do. Not just to dial for the sake of dialing, but what's your purpose behind what you're doing? How can you be more intentional with your planning?
Yep.
So again, kind of off on a tangent there as well, but having that legacy of the true basics of the business and implementing, what do we need today? How is the recruiting industry changed today, and how do we implement that into our company, into our training?
Yeah. So kind of on the innovation thing, like, do some companies, sorry, maybe if I'm thinking about this, a training program, or, it takes a lot of resources and energy and knowledge to like put together a robust training program and then do that like week in, week out, year in, year out. That's a lot of investment into that process. And if I'm a company, I would probably want to just like set it and forget it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But to be successful, you have to keep adapting.
You have to keep changing. Yeah. I think, like I said, I've experienced different training platforms, and I think there are companies out there that say, hey, this is, again, watch these videos. This is our training program. It's worked in the past. So, why fix it if it's not broken, right? Yep. But I think that's a little bit short-sighted. And I think, having this live training and having this kind of grow throughout the years has been incredibly beneficial to, GPAC as a whole, but even, on a, single person level. Yeah. I mean, they're getting the best. Yep. Because we're never content with sitting here and saying, okay, well, we shot that. It's good. This is the way we've always done it, so we're going to keep doing it that way. But really kind of looking at it critically and say, how can we do this better? How can we get this information and actually make people more successful more quickly? Yeah, right. So, when I initially started, when I was interviewing, they're like, hey, it might be 4 months, 5 months until you make your first placement. Yeah. So I think realistically, we have people that are, essentially getting there quicker. Yeah. So because we have been innovated, because we've kind of adapted, because we have this live training, we're seeing people that are having success more quickly. Yeah. Because you're kind of refining the delivery system. And like I said, they're in the game right away. Yeah. So they don't have to sit in an office and watch videos for, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. They're in the game, they're implementing what they're learning, and we've had people in training making placements. Yep. So I think coming into this, that's really cool. Yep. And I think that only happens if you're innovative. Yep. Yeah, that's really good. Let's talk remote, because you mentioned it early on, and like we're in another moment in our nation and world where I don't know, there's a lot of question marks about who's going to head back to work. So how have, you mentioned, you've kind of explained how we went from having a bunch of people in a room to now it's 100% remote. So what is that process like now? What are some of the challenges to remote beyond engagement? Kind of talk about that. Yeah. I truly believe that our training has never been better. And I think that was unique as we kind of, went remote. We didn't maybe necessarily know what to expect. Yep. But, I will say in this remote setting, we've had to refine what we're doing day in and day out. We have had to innovate. We've had to get a little bit more creative. And how do we actually, get this information and make it really, really effective to the people that we're presenting it to. So again, that doesn't come from a place of, well, we have to do this, but we really want them to be successful. Yep. That's every single day we're coming in and we're saying, this is your basics. This is your foundation. So in a remote setting, being able to, have things like Ring Central and, Zoom meetings. Yep. And I think that's really been the game changer. Just a communication platform. Yeah, absolutely. So I don't necessarily need to sit desk side with someone. I can screen share with them. I can see what they're seeing. I can call them. I can make sure I'm engaged with them. And I think it probably highlighted the need to do that when we're in a remote setting, to not let anyone kind of be out on that island on their own. Yep. So, when you're remote, you've got, let's say even in person, you've got a large class. Yep. That's a lot of people. And so some companies may still have to do that at some point. We're 100% remote. Yep. So you're looking at 12 to however many little boxes on a screen. So either setting, it's different than one-on-one training. Yeah. How do you make sure everybody gets what they need? Well, I think we have to empower them. I think, again, Shay and I can be great cheerleaders, or, Ashley or Bria can be great cheerleaders. We can be that support. But I think you have to empower people to say, if you're struggling, if you need help on a call, if you need help with your plan, you have to be proactive about reaching out. So I think that's two settings there. Of course, we'll have kind of our classroom setting. Make sure that you take this time. This is your hour or 2 hours to ask questions. Don't ever sit in that training session and not get the answers that you need. And then I think outside of that, saying, hey, if you don't tell us, we don't know. So if you're struggling with something, if you're kind of feeling like, hey, I don't understand this. Can I get a little bit of help? Make sure you're proactive in reaching out, whether it's me, whether it's Shay, whether it's your coach, whether it's a senior recruiter. Find someone that can mentor you. Find someone that you can kind of hitch your wagon to and, get whatever it is that you need.
We talked a little bit about the whole, there's automated, maybe third party or automated training, and then there's in-person training, and there's, now that we are remote, I think a company of our size, and maybe if there are others out there, we're 400 or 500 strong. At some point, it's going to be challenging. Either you need a larger training team to have that kind of ratio of one trainer per number of people.
Sure.
That goes for physical training. I mean, any kind of coaching environment, right? You need to have that ratio do you know what that ratio is?
I don't, not off the top of my head.
But a strong enough ratio where people aren't getting lost in the shuffle, right? So it does kind of force this question of what is the value of providing some automation to that, to not waste maybe time or to create efficiency? What's your take on that?
Yeah. So, I mean, the hope would be that, you build out some resources that, people can utilize so that they feel empowered to tackle some of those things on their own. But then use us for maybe some of those, oh man, I couldn't find that in the, training or the resources. Can you help me out? And we can do more of that one-on-one focused training.
Yeah. And again, this is there's no formula for this. And I think if you're listening to this podcast, I don't want you to get lost in the weeds thinking that we have it all figured out, or that the thing that we're communicating is some product we're selling. We're not, I think, but just if I'm being honest as the host of the podcast, one of my jobs here at GPAC is to help develop some of these training resources to take our training program to the next level. And I see that, just my personal opinion, 100%, as this really cool fusion of providing some really cool digital platform courses to that you as a recruiter can go take on your own and take your time to do that and focus in, so that when you are with Erin or Shay or some of the training, you're actually engaged with some knowledge. You've got some pre-information. You're doing some of the work on your own, so that when you are in the room, whether that's digital or real, you're getting that kind of full experience. And I think that's a really cool thing. And I don't know, if there's companies out there, I don't know what they need, but I certainly see that blend as something there. I feel like there's something unique there for the future right now. Because reality is we may be remote for a while. Right.
And I think, kind of to just expand on that, I mean, a really important thing is that everyone is receiving the same message, right? That they all kind of have the same consistency. They receive the same message. They receive the same training. Because I think at the end of the day, what makes us successful is that we know the business. Right? We have 31 years. I mean, hundreds of years of collective knowledge. I think, it'd probably be a little bit foolish not to capture some of that and share it with everyone. So I think having that consistent message, making sure we're doing things the right way, because one thing, whether it's on a personal level or just GPAC in general, we want to be the best. We want to operate with an integrity. We want to operate with professionalism. I don't want to be that recruiter out there that's just slinging resumes and wasting your time. So having a training platform that, really teaches you the basics and really you can build on that and make yourself famous in your space as that go-to person, because you set yourself apart. You're doing things a little bit different than that other recruiter that's maybe just slinging resumes.
Yep.
Now, again, I think, that training, whether it be on the online platform or, in that live version, I think it's really, really critical that we have both.
Yep.
Reinforcement over and over again is really how you're going to learn this.
Yeah. You are an expert in your field. You do really good work, and you take really big responsibility for what you do. So you only know what you know, but I want to know, what are some of those keys to success? And the first one I'll ask is kind of related to remote. If a company out there is having to transition to a remote training environment, what are some just keys to success, things you got to do?
Yeah. Well, I think we have to realize that, everyone's probably at a little bit different spot. Maybe they've worked remote before. Maybe they haven't.
Yeah.
So I think setting them up for success, do they know how, are they in a good spot as far as their location?
Yeah.
Do they have a support system, making sure that's kind of in place? But, when they actually get into the training, are they empowered? Do they feel comfortable to make sure they're reaching out? Do you have that support system for them, in the event that they do have, some issues? And I think, one thing that I've definitely learned, as we've hired different people over the years, is everyone comes from different backgrounds.
Yep.
Everyone comes from different skill sets. And I think that's actually cool, right? Yeah. We see a lot of different unique personalities. Yep. We see a lot of different life experiences from people that, graduated high school and started to, people that are, more seasoned in their careers.
Yep.
And again, I think as a company, if you're training remote, you have to meet people where they're at.
Yep.
So you can't take this one size fits all.
Yep.
You can't.
Gotta feel personalized.
Yeah. Yep. And again, I might be really, really great at some of our tools, but maybe I struggle with the live conversations. Maybe I'm really quick to pick up the live conversations, but maybe I really, really struggle with how to organize my day.
Sure.
So I think it again can't be a one size fits all. It has to be tailored to that person, especially in this remote setting.
Yep. And I love that. Honestly, again, in my own opinion, if I'm interjecting that, I think, the world with the rush of the internet, and I think Shay and I talked about this in a couple other podcast episodes too. Like, the world kind of made this grand charge toward automation and digital. And I think everybody's realizing, like, we're human, and there's something beautiful and genuine about the personal relationships, and that still is where training will always thrive.
Yeah.
Is in the people. So I love that.
We're a people business. I mean, everything we do is based on people and helping people. Yeah. Right. So I think internally and externally, that's what again kind of got me hooked to this opportunity.
Right. What are some strategies that you would share as to how to make sure training sticks?
I think it's taking what you're learning and implementing it right away. Whether it be tools or whether it be, really content that we're covering, you're going to learn best by doing. So, I think we're asking people to trust us a little bit and say, hey, we're not going to throw you off the deep end, if you're not ready to swim, but have a little bit of faith that we're there to catch you. So I think being, trusting the process, but also, saying, hey, I mean, you're only going to learn by putting yourself into these situations. You're only going to get some industry insight by not Googling things, right? Which again could be a very powerful way to learn, but learn from the resources that you have, and then don't hold on to that knowledge and then forget about it a week later. Implement it right away. Yep.
And maybe that is advice for anybody going through any training, right?
Yeah.
Is apply what you're being taught.
Yeah.
And maybe you already said this, but I'll ask it anyways. Like, what is something that you wished people knew going into training? Like kind of the insight to you as a trainer.
Yeah.
What's something that you wish people understood about that process coming in?
I think this happens in our interview process, but really having this mindset, I think when you're coming in, that this will be a challenge.
Sure.
This will humble you. And I think, the way that I look at it is whether you're day 1 or whether you're year 5, this is a humbling experience. And it's humbling in the best way.
Yep.
And it's humbling in a lot of different facets.
Yep.
So you might be really, really good at something. You might be the best project manager, but if you come into this business, you're going to be humbled.
Yep.
It's unlike anything that you've ever done before. I'm humbled on year 5 that I continue to learn.
Yep.
That I continue to grow, that
Yep.
I continue to meet these wonderful people that I train with nationwide every single day. That's a humbling piece of this business to me. But also I'm humbled by the work that I do. So I'm humbled by, and it sounds kind of cheesy, but the candidates where we're changing their lives.
Mm-hmm.
They're maybe in a bad situation where they can't necessarily or don't have the means to feel like they can move. Or don't have the resources to. We're impacting the bottom line with businesses. So I guess an overarching thing that I wish people knew is it's humbling.
Yeah. And for maybe anybody in any job, any career, taking on a new thing, it's probably that message of being teachable and humble,
coachable.
and not coming in thinking you got it figured out.
Yeah.
And these trainers are just clocking in 8 to 5, and
you won't have it figured out.
Yeah. To come in with an open mind, open heart to receive, and even if it's a very basic part of the onboarding process, I think a lot of that could be the make or break of what sets you up for success.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
That's awesome. Let's kind of wrap it up. This has been a really fun conversation.
Yeah, it's been great.
I know you. I've known you outside of the company. I know that you love traveling.
I do.
And so at the end of every episode, I kind of do 5 quick rapid fire questions just to kind of like just mix things up, have a little fun. I think I've talked a lot about travel. Maybe it's just because I don't know, we're in a pandemic and like travel was
we really want to go.
Kind of weird there for a while and maybe still is. But I'm just going to ask you these questions literally first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
Have a little fun
pressure.
here before the end, and we'll land on one that's meaningful for our audience. But all right, number 1, one item you always bring while traveling.
Does it have
first thing that comes to mind? What's the first thing that comes to mind?
Oh God, I don't know if that there's one. A phone charger.
Phone charger. Okay, don't forget your phone charger. Number 2, what's your biggest wish list destination?
I think there's too many to name. But I think I would probably say Australia.
Australia?
Yeah. I think that'd be really cool to go there.
Good eye.
Yeah.
All right. Number 3, most maybe top of mind travel disaster.
Travel disaster.
Something that didn't work out.
I've actually been very, very fortunate in my travels. I don't think that there's ever been a situation where I've maybe had a disaster. I don't know.
Nothing?
No.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, how about like, have you ever had like a most unpleasant airplane passenger moment?
Yeah. So I was traveling actually over to Rome. So it was obviously like a 10-15 hour flight, something like that. And I was in the middle seat and both people on either side of me fell asleep. So I could not move the entire time. They were out.
Yep.
I think if that's the worst thing that's happened in travel, I think that's
Fine.
okay.
Yeah, I think there are worse stories out there. Last one, and then we'll ask kind of a more relevant question, but well, it's all relevant. It's your life. But what is one, like, maybe a favorite travel hack? Do you have any? Are you the one that schedules?
I do.
Yeah.
I like to. I think I've been very lucky. So when I was kind of growing up, my grandma, my dad, my mom, like they really put a heavy emphasis on traveling.
Yeah.
So not that I necessarily have a hack, but I think looking back at some of my travels, one thing that I would say is be present. That would be my hack.
So good.
There's so many things to see in this world, and I think we do tend to get caught up on our phones and man, I got to get this picture for Instagram, but be present. And I think it's really cool to see different cultures and, experience different foods, but experience it with the people you're with and be present.
Erin, bringing it home. I love it. So good. Last question. This is back to our topic of the day. So we're about to wrap up the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
What's one thing, maybe it's something you've already said, maybe it's something you haven't said, one thing that you want people, maybe it's a trainer out there, training team, or a company out there. What's one thing you want them to know about training? Like, make sure they got this.
Yeah. Remember that, if you're training someone, you're it's truly an investment. They are people, care for them, and take that very seriously, take that responsibility seriously. And it's not just an investment, into your company, but it's investment into them.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to take that experience of working with you and, with your company with them throughout their lives. So, we do spend a lot of our time in the working portion of our lives. So it's impactful. So I think having that mindset of you might, different personalities, you're going to encounter a lot of different people within, training or within, your working portion of your life, but really having that mindset of making it the best opportunity that, and really taking that responsibility seriously. Kind of rambled there a little bit, but
awesome. I love how you brought the people component, like the value of people, such a resounding thing in our conversation today. So thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, it's been great.
This was fun.
Thanks.
And thank you for listening today. Thank you if you're on YouTube. Thanks for watching. Again, subscribe to the channel so you can stay updated as these episodes come out. Thanks for engaging with the conversation. We hope that there's something today that was beneficial to you. If you're a trainer or if you're a part of your training program at work, that ways that you can improve. And as Erin kind of said today, stay on the edge of innovation and adapting to changing things. As we all know, a lot is changing right now. So make sure you check out our website, gogpac.com/thehowl. A lot of great podcasts, a lot of great topics that we've covered so far. And if you want, check out our Knowledge Center. It's a place on our website as a company. We want to share everything that we've created, everything that we know is true as recruiters, having been in this industry for 30 plus years. We want to share all the knowledge that we have, and that's a great place to interact with that. gogpac.com/knowledge center. A lot of great topics out there that you can use to grow and help you win at the corporate game. We'll see you next time.